Most anyone who plays with the Spore creature editor will crave a more immediate application for all the writhing spiky bits you could put on your monsters, and evidently, this isn't lost on Maxes. Darkspore is about as immediate as it gets, though its combination of Diablo-style click-and-kill gratification with Spore's funky toolbox is far from the most intuitive mix available. Does all the tinkering yield gold, or just a bunch of base metal? Darkspore relies on a simple, some would say timeless formula: kill, loot, rinse, and repeat. From the minute-to-minute action to the long arc of progression, you're always collecting something, be it treasure, upgrades, or monsters, and their component parts. The loose story evokes Spore's galaxy-spanning structure, but for the most part, you'll ignore the droning computer narrator and focus on what's in front of you, namely a wily bunch of monsters to kill. Your Darkspore experience takes place primarily on exotic sci-fi locales overrun by genetic terrors, not unlike the ones you control. It's all fairly standard action RPG stuff. Any branching paths you encounter terminate at a loot cache more often than not, and at the end of each stage there's a boss fight or a series of enemy waves to fight through. You can go through the stages with up to 3 other players, each of you controlling squads of 3 heroes that you can switch to at any time. Pickup games are effortless to hop in on via the in-game matchmaking, though as things get more difficult, cherry-picked teams and squad compositions will yield dividends. You'll spend at least half the time on board your ship playing Quartermaster, Mad Scientist, and Coach, as you gain XP by going through stages. It isn't your heroes that level up, but your so-called progenitor level, which acts as your metagame progress marker. As you advance, you get access to new heroes and more squad slots, as well as other perks, like the ability to chain together more consecutive missions for augmented rewards. Your actual heroes increase in level based on the gear you equip them with, which you accomplish by means of an interface similar to the Spore creature editor. You can arm your heroes with weapons, body parts, and various sorts of trinkets, and you usually don't have to sweat what goes where, so feel free to get creative with the placement of the multitudes of eyeballs you'll uncover. Though you can only customize your heroes within certain bounds, don't expect Spore-like levels of mutability, you can get away with some pretty crazy looks regardless. After you acquire more than a dozen heroes, though, it becomes a major chore to look after them all and keep their equipment up to date. The interface just isn't up to the task. Darkspore is designed to keep you grinding away. Once you go through the campaign, you unlock higher difficulties that bolster the rewards accordingly. There's also a Rudimentary Pvp game that allows for 1-on-1 and 2-on-2 matches versus opposing squads. Underdeveloped though it may be compared to the PvE game, the fact that it favors an entirely different approach to team composition makes it worth at least checking out.
Insufficient power.
Given the sheer number of characters in its roster, it's surprising that Darkspore doesn't feel more homogeneous from a gameplay standpoint. Heroes are divided into 3 types: big, tough sentinels, scrappy ravagers, and glass cannon tempests. There's quite a bit of variability within each type, going a long way toward challenging state RPG archetypes. For instance, you wouldn't expect a sentinel character, essentially a tank, to be designed around pets, an area of effect attacks. Since members of your squad share some abilities, you're encouraged to think beyond the bounds of convention to concoct truly effective combinations. There are some novel abilities on show in Darkspore, and much of the game's draw comes from a desire to discover and experiment with them. Even powers that share similarities on the surface are governed by properties that differentiate them significantly, enough that, say, you may actually want to have 2 heroes with teleportation abilities on the same squad. In the end, Darkspore is merely asking you to wear out your mouse button by means of relentless clicking. The least it can do is make the results interesting to behold. Darkspore subscribes to the WoW school of accessibility, with graphics that look decent from a direction standpoint, but won't test your hardware very much. The environments range from the most tired backdrops straight out of the sci-fi style guide to some pretty cool ones with thick, tangible ambiances. The heroes and monsters actually look very interesting, at least as far as their designer's best intentions go. Once the players get their hands on them, all bets are off. We can only partially blame the game for what results. It's hard to argue with the appeal of a great action RPG. These games are deliberately designed to get their tendrils in you and keep you from surfacing until they're good and done. Darkspore is merely a pretty good action RPG. It works on a great fundamental level, but its execution is a little too cumbersome to let you truly appreciate its breadth. If you're just looking for something to hold you over till Diablo 3, though, you could certainly do a lot worse.